I asked if rubies can actually subject a country into, the turmoil that we're in right now. I wonder then, what sort of quotas are they given by, the government? And should that quota be reviewed, or how does it work?
No, it doesn't. There's no way rubies can hold the country to ransom. Let me tell you. If, for example,
there's no way.
No, absolutely not. You see, 60% of the market share is controlled by about 5 of the large companies. You have Total, you have Shell. I mean, clearly the percentage that rubies would probably have out of that 60 cannot be more than 15-20%. And apart from this 60 which goes to this 5, the other 40% are other local and independent marketers. Like our company was one of those who are, and there are almost 100, 200 of those others. So it's when you are controlling only about 15 to 20% of the import, you cannot be subjecting the country to ransom. That's not really the issue. The issue here is the government must be seen to be doing, like you say, something.
At the end of the day.
And rubies is large in terms of the number of service stations. But it's not necessarily the largest in terms of really their import quota or the share that they are given. But you see, so it doesn't. But the point here is.
So this is sort of a disinformation from government.
Of course, I mean the government must be seen to be doing something, and the government has said from day one that people are hoarding. We're going to deal with traders. MPS has been saying this for the last couple of weeks.
Action, yes.
But the reality is, it is a commercial decision. I mean, you cannot pay people their subsidies. They'll consign their products to other countries. So if you don't allow it to come through Mombasa tomorrow, these multinational companies, they'll consign it through Dar es Salaam. I mean, it's not a big deal. Already much of our fuel, by the way, because of capacity problems in the pipeline, in the last few years, almost 10 years, we've been losing quite a substantial amount of our market share in DRC and Burundi and Rwanda to Tanzania, because they import through Tanzania because of challenges on the system. So really, in my view, you mentioned about NOC.
Yes, and I wanted just to...
If you have driven around the last couple of weeks, those are the stations which are permanently closed.
They're permanently closed.
They don't even pretend to be selling anything. No. And that is because NOC has been leaked dry in the last 10 years. It's really bankrupt, and they've said so many times. They can't afford to buy. Otherwise, when you are doing the tenders at the end of every month, you put in based on your capacity and based on whatever locations you put in your whatever. So if you don't have capacity, then you will not tender sufficient quantities. So I mean the government has to really leave this thing liberalized, or if they want to control the price, be able to reduce some of the taxes. Okay. I don't think there's any.
So should the question that now should be on the table is, should we liberalize this market?
I think it's better to have something expensive but in supply than to have no supply and the country grinds to a halt. Look at the industries. I mean, in manufacturing, we can't access diesel. Even when we are getting it, the whole week we've been buying it at 30, 40 shillings more than the recommended price. I think there is also another very important reason why the government is stuck with this price control of fuel is the politics. The government has become a player in the elections. So if the government removes that subsidy tomorrow and the prices go to, or increased by the 40 you suggested, and these things go to 170, clearly then the side that the government is supporting in the election, the other side has been saying that this government, since the handshake, they have been increasing the price of fuel. Yes, so there's the political aspect of it that the government is trying to manage also. They don't want to be seen to be increasing fuel when they are pushing, for election and as a player in the election. So that is a key determinant. That's why they have been stuck with this thing. Otherwise, if there was no election and they were not players, they would have said, okay, these are the realities. International prices of oil have gone up, and the government cannot absorb that, whatever. And but they cannot because of also that's also a key.
That's true.
A key reason. But I think, in my view, you cannot have your cake and eat. The government wants to really collect revenue on petroleum. 1/5 of our imports is petroleum. It's about 20% of all our imports. It's huge. if the government wants to collect revenue on that, then the government has only one option really. If you can't afford it, just let it liberalize. Because in a liberalized economy, you'll never have shortages.
Yeah.
And by the way, even the strategic storage reserve is catered for in the system by the ministry. So that every month you must report how much, at least you must have 2 months minimum stocks as a marketer. You must have at least 2 months minimum stock in your the system for you in the pipeline or in the storage of Kenya pipeline company for you at any one time. This is something that the law provides that they must. They can't even push it up to 3 months. So that's not an issue. It can be, and without the government paying its own money and buying fuel and keeping it in a tank somewhere, the players can do that by putting, that you must have a minimum reserve, like banks. You have to put a certain amount of 10-20% of your cash revenue in central bank. They have that kind of arrangement even for petroleum. So that's not the issue really. Here is one of where you try to limit the price because politics at the end of the day, and you're not able to pay the subsidy. And so we end up in a shortage.
So they actually caught up in a catch-22.
Yeah. And I had a full page today on this issue where I actually concluded that the economy sounds like in 2002, and when you read it, you'll see. But
where's the full page?
You see, even before in Standard, even before.
What page is that?
Even before the war in Ukraine, you remember the petroleum prices have really shot up. It has gone from 80 to around 120 almost before the war. Because it went from $50 per barrel. It went to, by November it had gone to $80 a barrel. So it's not really about the war. And if you look at it's on page 7. But if you look at the same Standard today, Honorable, you'll see year-on-year inflation by World Bank on food.
From jobs to kitchen, we are back
Kenya.
to 2000. Yes.
Kenya is the 4th highest. It has gone up by 34% year-on-year. Inflation on food. You see it on page 26 by World Bank on the Standard today. So even it's not about the war really. It's that globally the food prices have been going up because of the effects of COVID-19. Petroleum prices have gone up. So what the government needs to do, in my view, really, and this is something that some of us have been pushing for a long time, the government needs to reduce spending.
Yes.
I mean, if when you are in a tight situation, why do you still want to spend hundreds of billions on infrastructure, money that you will squeeze Kenyans to pay through these taxes? So there's no other way about it. You just need to say, look, I have to live within my means. I reduce expenditure. And this is where the government is. They've been consistently having a budget deficit of 9% from 2013 up to today. And there's no, and so you trying to collect more money. That's why they cannot let go, Professor, on every liter. You're charging SGR levy 2%. In a year, the government is collecting 30 billion shillings on SGR levy. But everything imported into this country, any import, I mean, look.
Any import?
Yes, import value, anything from 2016 is a law. You're paying 2%.
2%.
And it's also on the fuel, 2%. So let me tell you, and so you have 8 other levies and taxes, from excise duty to VAT, to petroleum development, to maritime shipping.
Thank you.
I mean, you imagine, right? So you can only reduce these things if you can reduce your expenditure.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And this is what the government is not willing to.
There's 2 ways to agriculture. Right now we're talking about 1.3 million livestock that have died because of hunger. We are an agri-driven economy. Yet we don't seem to, reflect that in our budget at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's not only livestock. This is a country where 80% of the economy is dependent on agriculture in general, or subsistence economy. But the government is an elitist government. It's run by elites. If the focus is on communication, on finance sector, on manufacturing, on this area, this is where incentives are always given. And so you find in this budget with 1.3 million animals at the cost of 30 billion being lost in the last 3 months.
Yes.
The total amount of money the government has allocated to 23 counties affected by the drought is 1.5 billion for livestock. 1.5 billion out of 3.5 billion. So you are really, your priorities are misplaced.
And it's bringing you 30 billion.
That's the issue. Our priorities are, that's why we are where we are today. Otherwise, like Mashmo said here, our economy, if it is about revenues and expenditure, it's 10 times. The Moi's last budget was 218 billion revenue. You are collecting 2.3 trillion, 2.4 trillion. So it's not about, it's about, but the effects are the same. The situation is where we are the same. We had problems of, of the economy, people can't afford, low cost of living was high, everything was in chaos. So people are suffering in the same way that they were suffering at the time. So the thing is,